again.
RPN is not responsible for the views, actions, statements, or opinions of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Good evening, everyone. And of course, welcome back to another very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. Hope you guys are having a lovely day. Thank you so much for joining us. If you haven't yet, do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the red pill, hit the thumbs up, whatever it might be, whatever platform you're on. Let me do a refresh over here on Twitter so I can make sure we are working. And yes, we are good to go on all platforms. All right, well, we have another couple of anon-ish posts coming from the Department of Labor. And also over the weekend, I learned that someone, an anonymous whistleblower, has filed an ethics complaint against the Secretary of the Department of Labor, Lori Chavez DeReimer. I thought that was strangely timed, so we're going to talk about that. We've also got to discuss the most recent events taking place in the world of election security. Bit of an update for you on Venezuela. Tragedy taking place over the weekend in a anti-Iranian protest, and of course, lots going on in Minneapolis. I'd just like to remind everybody, if you do have the time during the show, make sure you check out the sponsors in the bottom of the video in the description. We'll talk about a couple of them, but in the meantime, sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn because we're going to get into it right about now. All right, my friends, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. Really do appreciate it. And want to give a big shout out to all of you that are out there in the chat, whether you're talking, whether you're chatting, whether you're working and lurking, whatever it might be. Thank you very much for joining us. So let's check in with the Department of Labor. Now, more than any other federal agency, it seems that the Department of Labor has become the de facto place for the administration to post memes, giving shout outs to patriots and anons. And you can see right here over the weekend on the 10th, they posted this: President Trump holding an umbrella. It says, "Hold the line, patriots. Our nation is worth fighting for." Pretty cool. And then earlier today, got this one. "It's Monday. Patriots are in control. Let's get to work." Once again, President Trump featured prominently, and the message being that, of course, the patriots are truly in control. We have a lot of stuff going on, and President Trump and the administration have a lot planned for the month of January. Also, today is a very special date. We'll talk about that in a moment. But first, considering how these memes are being published on the Department of Labor's website, I found it very interesting that Secretary of the Department of Labor, Lori Chavez DeReimer, was whistleblown upon for an apparently inappropriate relationship with a subordinate. Now, I want to make it very clear, I am not suggesting that Lori Chavez DeReimer actually engaged in an inappropriate relationship, but I thought that the timing was all too coincidental. Now, there has been a comment coming from the Office of the Inspector General, who will doing the investigation. And of course, a team member for Lori Chavez DeReimer has also spoken up. If you don't know much about Lori Chavez DeReimer, she is 57. She is married. She used to be a Republican congressman in Oregon. And the claims surround a relationship with a man. We don't know who that man is. We don't know what his age is. only that he is her subordinate. And the claims essentially state that she and this alleged paramour on at least 3 different occasions met up in Lori Chavez DeReimer's Washington, D.C. apartment. And then there was also 2 separate visits to a hotel room while she was traveling. This whistleblower has also made the claim that while Lori Chavez DeReimer was traveling, she was having the American taxpayer pay for trips that were inappropriate and not meant to be put onto us. They should have been private trips that she took herself. Now, this complaint was filed last week, if I'm not mistaken, with the Office of the Inspector General. And as I stated, they have begun a probe. She is also being accused of drinking in her office during the workday. And as I stated, committing this travel fraud. Now, allegedly, she had her chief of staff and deputy chief of staff make up these official trips to destinations where Lori Chavez DeReimer allegedly has family and friends. And so on its face, of course, this needs to be investigated so that either it can be proven to be true or it can be debunked. Now, also in this complaint, they claim that Chavez DeReimer has abused her authority to force department aides to run personal errands for her. This is an issue that has gotten a number of previous people who have been in the Trump administration in trouble. Former EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt apparently was having people do this. Not exactly certain that that's a reason to have people fired. You know, people have staff. And when you're the secretary of a cabinet level position, you know, maybe you have your staff run an errand for you so that you can get about the business of fixing the country. Now, Taylor Rogers is a communications official for the Department of Labor. And of course, they categorically deny every allegation that's being made. Secretary Chavez DeReimer is an incredible asset to President Trump's team, and she will continue advancing the president's America First agenda. I believe that to be true. Now, I think it's well worth suggesting that people who are the worst offenders and who need to get fired from their jobs, there are never any whistleblowers who come forward with claims about their character or about who they're sleeping with. So I tend to put very little veracity in these claims. And until something else is said in terms of the investigation by the Inspector General, I don't anticipate that I'm going to be having much to say about this. But I also don't think that it's going to stop the Department of Labor from continuing to post these spicy memes that a lot of people are picking up on. Now, we also have this latest decision in the lawfare against President Trump. And I think that I have Lisa's vape. Honey, I have your vape. I didn't mean to take it. If you want to come get it, it's over here. All right. So yet another Biden-era judge, this time in Washington state, has temporarily struck down a very key provision within President Trump's executive order on mail-in ballots. Now, the executive order requires proof of citizenship on federal voter registration forms, and required mail-in ballots must be received by Election Day. In my opinion, and in the opinion of the people who care about election security, this is obviously very key. Now, it also instructed the DOJ to take action against individual states that count ballots that they receive after Election Day. If the ballot is not there on Election Day, you can't be counting it. And if you attempt to count it and then pad the vote counts, well, then the Department of Justice is going to bring charges against you. Also, I wanted to say thank you very much to Brightcore. They sent me a new Red Pill 78 coffee mug. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's got a lid, like a wooden lid that is actually a cup holder as well. And I thought that was very kind of them. Sent that to me for Christmas. Now, U.S. District Judge John Chun, as I stated, is a Biden appointee, and he's blocked certain parts of this order that President Trump has put into place, and he is saying that the order cannot be implemented in Washington and Oregon. Can anybody think of any reason why Washington and Oregon would have a problem making sure that the people voting in federal elections are not citizens of the United States of America, or that the ballots must be received by Election Day? Washington and Oregon are kind of like ground zero for the creation of the mail-in ballot scheme. So obviously that's what's happening here. But Judge Chun says that the executive order violated the Constitution's separation of powers and claims that President Trump has exceeded his authority. Thank you so much also to Frodo Baggins for donating $50 over there on Rumble Wallet. If anybody is wondering what Rumble Wallet is, if you go to my Rumble channel, there is a little tip button that should be on the left-hand side of the screen. You can use that to donate Bitcoin directly to the channel. It doesn't get taken by anybody else. There's no cut that's taken by a third party. And in order to do that, you just have to download the Rumble Wallet app. I'll probably, well, you know what? Tell you what, I'll just tell you all about the Rumble Wallet app right now, considering that Frodo has donated this. All right. Now, you guys know that the banks are oftentimes not your friends. They can take your accounts, they can cancel your accounts, they can freeze your credit cards, and they can essentially decide what it is that you're going to buy, say, or support. Big banks and financial institutions have total control, and they often use it. Now, this is why financial independence matters more than ever right now, and so this is why they've introduced Rumble Wallet. It's a wallet built for real freedom, and with Rumble Wallet, you control your money. No banks control it, no governments. There are no tech companies in between you and your money. You can buy digital assets like Tether, Tether Gold, and Bitcoin. It's all done in one secure place. No permission necessary, no middlemen, no cancel buttons. And when you want to support creators like myself and others here on Rumble that you actually believe in, you can use that Rumble Wallet app to directly tip content creators. It's secure, it's instant, and it's without interference. To be fair, there is a slight lag with Bitcoin because it just takes time to go through the network. But trust me, it's virtually instantaneous. This is yours to protect for your future. This is a credit line that can't shut off. It is your wallet permanently. It's yours to protect your family. And when the system fails, when institutions turn on their own people, financial sovereignty is the difference between security and vulnerability. So Rumble Wallet isn't about politics. It's about freedom, ownership, and protecting what's yours. So take control today. Download the Rumble Wallet now in the App Store for the phone that you have, whether it's Apple or Android, and step away from the big banks for good. True ownership, true protection, and true financial freedom. You can also go to wallet.rumble.com. Thank you very much to Rumble for coming out with that. Now, also, this is pretty key, too. If you have crypto, say you're using like an app like Coinbase or something like that. Coinbase is a big crypto market with their own wallets on the app. But if something were to happen to Coinbase, then you may not be able to get your crypto. With Rumble Wallet, you have a private key. The wallet is yours. You own it. It's essentially, out there on the blockchain, and the app is on your phone. You can freely move it from device to device. Nobody else can come and take it. The only way they can take that crypto is if they take your private key, which, of course, you're never going to give to anybody else. So thank you very much to them. Now, the White House, of course, responded to Judge Chun and his order. President Trump cares deeply about the integrity of our elections, and his executive order takes lawful actions to ensure election security. This is not the final say on the matter, and the administration expects ultimate victory on this issue. I, as well, expect ultimate victory on this issue. There is nothing improper about what President Trump did. There was no overstepping of his powers. This is a simple and easy to understand argument. We cannot have secure elections if people who are not legally allowed to vote are casting ballots, and if the election day extends for weeks beyond the actual election day, and if mail-in ballots are universal, then that means that anybody, anywhere can get a hold of one of those ballots, send it in, and the people counting the votes, and I use that in very loose quotations, would be able to pad the vote to as many as they need to steal an election, as we have seen take place in years past. So undoubtedly, President Trump and the administration are going to be fighting this. They're going to be asking for a revised decision, an appeal. If necessary, they will take this all the way up to the Supreme Court. But this executive order strengthens voter citizenship verification, banning foreign nationals from interfering in U.S. elections. The Election Assistance Commission will require documentary government-issued proof of U.S. citizenship on its voter registration forms. You've got agencies like DHS, Social Security, the Department of State. All of them must provide states with access to a federal database, which they can then use to verify eligibility and citizenship of individuals who are registering to vote. This will come in very, very handy in the near future, and it's highly relevant to other stories that we're going to talk about today. Now, of course, Pam Bondi also is prioritizing prosecution of non-citizen voting and related crimes, including through the use of DHS records and coordination with states' attorneys generals. We've seen this partnership rolled out in a number of states to great effect, and federal election-related funds will be conditioned on whether or not states comply with this integrity measure that's being set forth by federal law, including the requirement that states use that national mail voter registration form, which does, of course, cover that required proof of citizenship. So President Trump has a number of things that must be codified into law in order for this to be unimpeachable and bulletproof. This obviously has yet to happen. Seen some pretty lackluster commitment coming from Congress recently, and as we have yet another budget fight that's going to be coming up in the near future, I think that it's highly likely we're going to be looking at yet another shutdown. So we need to keep that in mind. Now, why is this relevant to stories that we're seeing today? Well, take a look at this. A building manager at an apartment building has just been arrested. Why? Because she voted multiple times in 2024 by filling out ballots for people who no longer lived at this apartment complex. She was essentially taking their mail-in ballots, filling them out, and voting for whomever it was she wanted to win the election. Oh, and by the way, this also is in Washington.
Filling out and submitting ballots from her former tenants.
In Franklin County, an apartment manager with access to ballots from former tenants allegedly abusing the system. This confirmed by Detective Andrew Gardner in his investigation.
I was able to identify several other ballots that look to be look to have characteristics on the signature line that were not consistent with the signatures on file.
Investigators say 4 ballots were illegally submitted, with 3 being counted in the 2024 general election. The outlier was rejected because of a mismatched signature.
This case is still open, and we are still collecting information from community members that may have been affected by this.
According to the sheriff's office, the woman admitted to voting all 4 ballots and forging the signatures. She was booked into Franklin County Jail for 12 felony charges related to
12 felony charges, 4 ballots that she was discovered on. But of course, the question is, how many ballots did she actually cast? If they didn't find additional ballots, is she going to give that information up and get herself another 3 felonies per ballot? I highly think not. But the fact that she was running an apartment building where quite often people are coming and going, I mean, you tend to have a lower length of time in terms of occupancy at apartment buildings. People tend to be more transient than they are at a home that they own. There was ample opportunity for ballots to come and go. And because probably every single person living at this apartment building was receiving ballots in one form or another, I think it's highly likely that she voted many, many more times beyond that. Now, in terms of additional stories surrounding this, we have the same thing happening on the other side of the country. This time, it was illegal aliens voting in New Jersey. Now, if President Trump's executive order had been codified by the legislature and this would have been in place at this time, of course, they wouldn't have been able to vote. But you had 2 non-citizens charged in New Jersey for illegally voting, this time in the 2020 election. Now, they actually lied on citizenship applications. Their names, Muhammad Muzammil and Muhammad Shakil. Neither of them were U.S. citizens when they registered to vote in New Jersey. Now, they both falsely claimed on their voter registration forms that they were, in fact, U.S. citizens. So they cast ballots in the November 2020 federal election, including the presidential race. And after voting illegally, both of them went on to apply for U.S. citizenship. They falsely declared on their N-400 applications that they had never registered or voted in any election in the United States of America. Now, of course, they've been arrested. They've also been charged with felonies. If they are convicted, they face significant potential legal ramifications. And, of course, they could be deported. I hope that happens. I want to see people in every single state around this country be brought to justice in the harshest form possible. Because whereas previously the mainstream media would go on air and tell us that, oh, election fraud is exceedingly rare, we hardly ever see anybody getting busted for election fraud. Well, that's a false equivalency. Just because you don't see something happening doesn't mean that it's not actually happening. It means that you're either too stupid to do something about it, or you are willfully ignoring it, or you just simply don't know because the people are too good at it and they're getting away with it. All of the above is likely true. But in addition to that, we also have word coming out of Oregon, which is kind of building on a story that we talked about this past summer. You see, Judicial Watch had sued the state of Oregon to have some 5 million names removed from their voter rolls. Just so you know, that is out of the total. There is roughly 4 million people who live in the state of Oregon. They were successful in that effort. And now they've just won an extension of that removal. Nearly another 1 million voters are being removed from the Oregon voter rolls. And this was announced by the Oregon Secretary of State. So due to Judicial Watch alone, they've had nearly 6 million voters removed from their voter rolls. Now, they call this not invalid voters. Oh gosh, what are they? I don't know. These are voters that are apparently not voting, but they're not. That doesn't mean that they're not voting all the time. They're just not voting regularly, or perhaps they're dead and their names are still on the voter rolls, and then they can be activated at some point in the future. We know this happens all over the country. Talked with Andrew Paquette and with my buddy Ed here on the show about this happening in both Nevada and New York. Again, this is a nationwide problem. Voter rolls are being cleaned up all around the country, and the quicker we can get this inactive. Thank you so much, Robin Carroll. Inactive voters is the official title for these people. But this means that there are nearly now 6 million fewer opportunities for fraud to be committed in the state of Oregon in the future. Ghost voters are voters who are registered to vote and voting at addresses where they can't live. So that would be like a person who lives at a UPS box, or a person who lives at an empty lot, or 50 people crammed into a 500 square foot efficiency apartment. Those are the ghost voters. But inactive voters are voters who are not doing much of anything at all. But this is a win. This is a big win. Now, President Trump also made some interesting comments about Cuba over the weekend. There is an aspect of this Venezuela situation that I didn't really think about until last night. I was thinking, about a lot of people have been focusing exclusively on oil in terms of what happened in Venezuela. Certainly oil is an aspect of it. I think probably the Bitcoin that Venezuela holds is probably an aspect of it as well. I think undoubtedly the election fraud, Smartmatic, that is another aspect of it. The rare earth elements, the gold and the silver, natural resources, that is another aspect of it as well. But by changing a guard in Venezuela, we've also developed a significant bargaining chip in our trade war with the nation of Canada, our nation to the north. Of course, the same could be said for nations like Russia and China, anybody who was previously doing business with Venezuela, any country that was looking to put pressure on us to get more favorable trade terms. This could now have a major impact. Why Canada, though? Well, Canada and the United States were huge partners in terms of the purchase of oil. The oil that Venezuela has is virtually the same type of oil that Canada was importing to the United States. So now that we have access to Venezuelan oil and we are engaging in this sort of economic relationship with the nation of Venezuela, we no longer need to engage in the same type of economic relationship with the nation of Canada. So that means that President Trump and the administration can use that economic bargaining chip to get whatever it is that we want out of the nation of Canada. There are, quite a few things that I could imagine this would come in handy with. But certainly one of the biggest things we've wanted Canada to do was to strengthen the northern border. they've been kind of reluctant to do that. And of course, Canada is at times funding the globalist New World Order and attempting to use that to put pressure on the United States of America. But now Canada is going to lose a significant amount of money because we're not going to need to be buying their oil anymore. This is also going to have a huge impact on Cuba because Cuba is essentially blockaded from most of the world. And Cuba, as we learned with the kidnapping or the extraction, shall I say, of Nicolas Maduro, he was being primarily guarded by Cuban commandos. And whether that's because he didn't trust Venezuelans to be around him, or I think more likely, the Cuban commandos that were surrounding him were likely there to keep him in check. But now President Trump has said in a Truth Social post that Cuba lived for many years on large amounts of oil and money from Venezuela. In return, Cuba provided security services, and he says that in quotation marks, for the last two Venezuelan dictators, but not anymore. Most of those Cubans are dead from last week's USA attack, and Venezuela doesn't need protection anymore from the thugs and extortionists who held them hostage for so many years. I want you to just think about the way President Trump is saying this. It's like he is directly, in my mind, admitting that the proposition I put forth after the extraction of Nicolas Maduro is exactly what happened, that Maduro and the nation of Venezuela were essentially being held hostage, and Cuba was a large part of that plan to make sure that the Venezuelan government was doing what others wanted them to do. It's a lot like the deep state running things here in the United States of America under past administrations. Every time you saw a congressman or a president do something that made absolutely no sense in relation to the sovereignty or the well-being of the American people, you know that that was an order that was coming down from much, much higher up. So he continues by saying, Venezuela now has the United States of America, the most powerful military in the world by far, to protect them, and protect them we will. There will be no more oil or money going to Cuba, zero. I strongly suggest they make a deal before it's too late. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Did I read the rants already? No, I did not read the rants already. Hold on. ZBM says, random question. The company links below each of your episodes are your sponsors, right? That's correct. And it tells you exactly who they are. And also like what the code is and what the discount would be when you go there. But yes, there's more than just my sponsors. You'll also find links to my stuff on other platforms as well. So then President Trump raised a couple of eyebrows because apparently he's now backing a certain man with Cuban ancestry to run the country in the future. That would be Secretary of State, National Security Advisor, and many, many other things, Marco Rubio. Now, President Trump, in relation to somebody suggesting Marco Rubio should run Cuba, he said, it sounds good to me. President Trump likes to troll a lot. But wouldn't that just be something if the nation, if the Cuban government failed and then Marco Rubio, because he's Cuban, goes back to Cuba and then becomes the de facto ruler of Cuba for a little bit, and then Cuba becomes a territory of the United States of America. My goodness. Either way, Cuba is one of our closest neighbors, and it makes even more sense for the type of economic and political pressure to be put on Cuba than it did with Venezuela, because Cuba is directly in our backyard. I mean, Cuban Missile Crisis, anyone? We clearly have the Navy and the military in general to put a blockade around Cuba and force them into a position where they have to make a deal. And President Trump just loves to make deals. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with that. But I think that there's probably going to be some news coming on Cuba in the very near future. Now, thank you to Skank Hunt. I really do appreciate you, homie. He says, best show on Rumble. Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. Filter Dog says, how can we get Johnson and Thune off their asses? They need to leave office, to be quite honest with you. Sean Joe, thank you for the can. Who cares? Says hi. Just cause shoddy timer. I don't know what that means, but who cares? Thank you for being here. And then Sean Joe, thank you for the cookie as well. All right. Now, additionally, on Venezuela, President Trump here in that post, when he says, thank you for your attention to this matter, Rasmussen reports, refers back to that major whistleblower report that came from Venezuelans that had defected to the United States. And they remind us that the Venezuelan computer engineers didn't need software advice from Cuba, but Cuban experts helped the Venezuelan engineers to develop the election fraud system. Specifically, when it came time to build the poll books, Cuban intelligence agents sent out 10-man teams with one Venezuelan to every province in the country. He says, America, why are poll books important? They allow for the infusion of new voters, modification of data, or the possibility of identity theft. With poll books, you can perform an analysis of voters' behavior and participation rates. Poll books facilitate the projection of needed numbers of mail-in ballots to tip an election, the preparation of substitute ballots, and allow for observation of the behavior of voters in real time. I think it's undoubtedly President Trump knows about this Venezuelan whistleblower and all of this election fraud discussion prior to the events taking place in Venezuela. I think that it likely had a lot to do with it. So I think that we're probably going to see some major stuff happening with Cuba in the very near future. Now, right here, in addition to that, President Trump, through Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent, has just announced that in a few short days, we are going to be lifting the majority of sanctions against Venezuela. So this will facilitate the sale of oil, and it theoretically would allow Venezuela to re-enter the global economy. Although I tend to think that for the time being, a lot of that stuff is going to be running through emissaries of the United States of America. Now, he also said that nearly $5 billion in assets that were frozen by the IMF would also be redeployed, given back to the nation of Venezuela. That will immediately be available to them to help them rebuild their economy. And he said that smaller privately held companies were likely very quickly going to be moving back into Venezuela's oil sector. And, of course, you've got people coming from all over the world looking to return to Venezuela. You've also got some major U.S. oil companies who appear to be a little gun-shy about it. ExxonMobil CEO Darren Woods said about Venezuela on Friday that they are uninvestable under current conditions, citing weak legal protections and past nationalizations. So clearly the government of Venezuela is going to need to do something about that to make businesses feel safer about coming back in so that they don't have all of their capital and their infrastructure seized as it was in the past. Now, I think that it's a foregone conclusion. Venezuela is back. The United States is going to be like the big brother of Venezuela because we are now running the Western Hemisphere, North and South. And as a result of that, everybody in this area of the world is going to prosper at an enormous rate. Now, another big part of why we went into Venezuela has to do with silver mining. And as I said, natural resources are huge there. You'll probably remember maybe a week or two ago, there was a massive influxion of cash into the U.S. banking sector by the Federal Reserve. That influx of cash happened to do with lack of liquidity. Why do these banks have lack of liquidity? Because they were engaged in massive short selling on silver. Now, take a look at this. Goldman Sachs allegedly was just told a couple of days ago that they need to get out of their short positions on silver by at least 60% if they don't get rid of everything, because if they don't, then it will force the liquidation of Goldman Sachs entirely because they're not going to have the cash necessary to pay back on those shorts. It looks like HSBC is being told to get out of their short positions as well. If they don't exit their short positions by January 31st, the price of that silver on those short positions is going to be $347 an ounce. That's going to come up very, very quickly. Again, that makes it possible that HSBC and Goldman Sachs both could no longer be around. They would be completely liquidated, and a lot of people would benefit from that. But of course, a lot of people would also be in a really bad position as a result of it. Lee Walden says, good evening, Zach and crew. Amazing to experience what's going on. Obviously, this is a real chance for America, and her promise can shine. Be that as it may. First and foremost, a real election that's legit. Thanks. Sir, I absolutely agree with you 100%. I gotta take some Advil for my back. All right, now there's also a whole bunch of crap going on in Iran, and the news coming out of Iran obviously is filtered pretty heavily. Chrono Viewer, thank you very much for joining as a monthly member over there on Rumble. It is heavily moderated. There's a lot of propaganda. So I don't really know what's going on in Iran. I can tell you this. There have been protests that have been taking place. There was a protest here in the United States this weekend, and President Trump has made a couple of spicy comments about perhaps the United States of America going into Iran to help the Iranian people. Now, President Trump was asked about Iran as he was flying on Air Force One, and this reporter, apparently, who works for CNN, tried to cover up first the fact that they work at CNN. And then when President Trump figured it out, he just absolutely torched her. Hold on just a second. Let's pull this up.
Which options have you been briefed on? Are you meeting with senior officials?
Are you meeting with Am I going to really, are you asking me to say what will they do, where will we attack, when, and at what angle will we attack from?
Are you considering, I'm with the U.S. White House TV pool. I'm wondering, are you being briefed on options? I'm with CNN, sir.
Why don't you just say I'm with CNN? She says, I'm with the White House pool. Yes. And I say, what? You're with CNN. You're with CNN, you're with fake news. Because CNN is fake news. Go ahead, give me a question.
Let me hear from a real reporter, not fake news CNN. All right, now, I want to go back to Canada here, because apparently after what we did in Venezuela and what President Trump has suggested with Cuba, with Iran, with Greenland, apparently both Greenland and Canada are terrified. There's also been some commentary about perhaps annexing Alberta. So Canadians have for months apparently relished the fact that they are having tense relations with President Trump. Now, the administration has been forced to take a back seat to the flurry of geopolitical activity and military strikes. They thought that President Trump's design of turning them into the 51st state had waned, but they were apparently wrong. President Trump once again trolling them and suggesting that he's going to make Canada the 51st state. So Bloomberg reports that a blunt column in Canada's largest national newspaper went viral this week, warning of the possibility that Trump may use military coercion against Canada. The author's advice: learn from Finland's defenses against Russia, expand the civil defense force, build a national drone strategy inspired by Ukraine's example, and think about the unthinkable. It's all about changing the calculus, said Thomas Homer Dixon, one of the authors and a Canadian academic who researches globally. If there is an attempt to use military coercion against us, it needs to be clear that it's going to be enormously costly. Now, with all due respect and love to my Canadian brethren and sisters in the chat, Canada has significantly restricted the gun rights of Canadian citizens. So if it was to come to a 1-for-1 with the military of Canada versus the military of the United States, I hate to tell you guys which way it's going to go, but I think you all know which way it's going to go. Now, of course, I don't believe that President Trump is actually going to invade Canada. I think that that's totally ridiculous. But what might happen is significant economic pressure, such as that pressure that we've just put Canada under with the operation in Venezuela, and of course, the operation that may take place in Cuba, which would force Canada to reevaluate its footing when it comes to the negotiating table with the United States of America. Now, Carney had previously said he was going to stand up to Trump. Something tells me he's not standing up to much of anything at all at this point. Now, he also said this: Canada's military isn't built for a more hostile world. Well, that's obviously a problem. Its regular and primary reserve forces total fewer than 100,000 people to defend the largest national landmass on Earth. Natural disasters and other duties, such as a NATO mission in Latvia where Canadian soldiers are stationed, stretch its resources. So, to put that into layman's terms, Canada and their military ain't what it used to be. And if something were to go down, they would not be in a position to defend themselves. That is unfortunate. But again, I don't think President Trump is going to invade Canada. I do, however, think that he would use every tool in his pocket to force them to make a deal that they could not refuse. Thank you so much to AOB22, who says, Zach, thanks for everything you do. Appreciate you, and thank you very much. Yes, Carney is absolutely a World Economic Forum stooge. He's a globalist. President Trump is a nationalist, and we are building national sovereignty here in the United States of America. The one thing that I think would be tremendously beneficial for the people of Canada is if they did create a civil defense force and they gave all of their citizens guns, because then they would be able to defend themselves against a tyrannical government, the same as we did in revolutionary times. So interesting stuff. Let's go ahead and see what happens. Now, jumping over to this discussion about Iran, a U-Haul driver rammed through a group of anti-Iranian protesters on Sunday in Los Angeles. So you can see here this giant U-Haul. I don't think it was even carrying anything. He just had like pro-Iranian signs on the side. And from the scene, you can see protesters ended up surrounding the truck. They smashed the windows. And then the driver drove into the crowd. Protesters could be heard screaming as this truck smashed its way through the crowd. And then at the end of it, once the police got him to stop, they almost tore this man out of the truck, and the police ended up doing it. So let's get past this commercial very quickly. For some reason, this is not working today. Now, I'm a little sketchy on the exact circumstances of how this guy came to be in this U-Haul in the middle of this protest. The one thing that I will tell you is that I do not for a second believe that the Ayatollah of Iran or the government of Iran sent this dude to Los Angeles with a U-Haul to drive over people and say, you know, Allah Akbar, save Iran or something like that. I think if anything, this was likely a false flag operation, which would have ostensibly been done to convince the American government to perhaps, you know, commit some act against Iran. I don't think that that's going to happen either. But here is that truck from a slightly different angle. This is after they had it all stopped. And I believe we have some local news coverage discussing exactly what happened. The puff is actually not pink. The light is pink, and then it's illuminated by the light. It's white, though. See, it's the light.
From the scene there where a Free Iran protest was happening, and a live look at that protest right now.
Oh, my God. This is the most brilliant question in the chat. AOB, how did they find a U-Haul in California? There we go. That's what you should be asking, because U-Hauls of this size, especially in the state of California, simply don't exist, especially not in Los Angeles. I mean, they got rid of all of them. They all left the state because they went and moved someplace else. What? You are so smart. I love it.
A large crowd gathered there again. We are hearing from Fox 11 Los Angeles reporter Matt Seedorf that a U-Haul truck drove into that crowd of pro-Iranian demonstrators outside of a federal building in Westwood. LAPD on the scene there, and we still don't know how many.
So these are pro-Iranian, because the Iranian people, this is the narrative, the Iranian people are demonstrating against the Ayatollahs and the Muslim regime in Iran. So these people are marching to stand in solidarity with those protesters in Iran that want to go back to a democratic style of governance and get rid of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Many injuries are reported. Another look at that U-Haul truck on the scene there just a few moments ago. We got the shot overhead. Again, this U-Haul truck is being reported. It drove into this pro-Iranian demonstration in Westwood, Los Angeles. We're going to continue to follow this news.
So I haven't heard anything about people dying in this protest, but it's being reported that like nearly 600 people have been killed in Iran since these protests began about 2 weeks ago. This demonstration says that at least 2 people were examined but denied medical attention. So likely nobody was seriously hurt. Now, when they were first sharing pictures and videos of this event, the entire windshield of this U-Haul had been smashed out. And so it kind of looked like maybe this guy like directly drove into a big group of people and he crushed them all, but that didn't happen. You know, God bless. Good stuff. All right. Real briefly, before we continue, want to remind everybody one more time about Rumble Wallet, because they can freeze your accounts, they can shut off your cards, they can lock you out of your own money, they can do it overnight. Banks do not protect you, they control you, and that's why real financial freedom starts with ownership. So that's why they made Rumble Wallet. It is a non-custodial wallet built for people who refuse to give up control. With Rumble Wallet, you don't just buy currency like Bitcoin and Tether. You can also own Tether Gold, which is real gold on the blockchain. Digital currency that is pegged to gold, real gold. So through Tether Gold, you get direct ownership of physical gold bars, each one fully allocated, verifiable with the serial number, purity, and its weight. It's not paper gold. It's not an IOU. This is real physical gold without bank vaults, storage fees, or gatekeepers. So you can buy, sell, or move it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even when traditional gold markets are closed. And if you want, Tether Gold can be redeemed for physical gold, which is pretty powerful. And when you support creators on Rumble, you can also tip them directly using that Rumble wallet. It's peer-to-peer, and it's outside the banking system. Again, no permissions, no middlemen, no cancel button. The wallet is yours forever. So you can use wallet.rumble.com, that QR code, or you can download the Rumble wallet from the App Store on your phone. All right, now, pretty big news breaking earlier today. It would appear that federal prosecutors have just launched a criminal investigation into Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. Now, strangely enough, Jerome Powell responded to this criminal investigation very quickly. He put in a video out on X, on probably other social media platforms as well. But this is all likely due to the ballooning costs of the renovations being done at the Fed in their headquarters in D.C. Initially, the cost was supposed to be $1.9 billion. Right now, it's sitting at $2.5 billion. President Trump has said it's likely going to be much higher than the $2.5 billion. But CNN, when they reported on it, said Powell has asked the central bank's inspector general to conduct an additional review of the ongoing renovation. And last month, some state lawmakers grilled Powell over what they depicted as lavish upgrades to its D.C. headquarters at Powell's semi-annual monetary policy hearing. So the Fed's renovation project was approved by its board back in 2017. In 2017 dollars, it cost $1.9 billion when they began. In 2019, construction didn't begin for 2 more years in 2021, but then, of course, things got more expensive and it went up to $2.5 billion. They claim unforeseen conditions, which required more spending to rectify. But, of course, as President Trump has pointed out, the hallways are gilded with gold, rich Corinthian marble. Carrara marble and Corinthian leather, and it just gets more and more expensive. Now, Apparently, when they started taking walls down, they learned that there was a lot more asbestos than was anticipated, which means that they had to have all of that remediated. There was also toxic contamination in the soil, and apparently the water table was much higher than they anticipated as well. And because they were adding on to an existing building, that footprint probably was pressing down. You can go back to this summer when Congressman Anna Paulina Luna sent a letter to the DOJ accusing Jerome Powell of perjury. She said that on June 25th, Powell provided testimony under oath before the U.S. Senate Banking Committee, Housing and Urban Affairs regarding the renovation of the Fed's Eccles building. In his statements, he made several materially false claims, and separately in a letter to the Office of Management and Budget Director Russell Vogt, Chairman Powell characterized the changes that escalated the cost of the project from $1.9 to $2.5 billion as minor. Maybe for somebody who's running a central bank in the most powerful nation on planet Earth, $1.9 to $2.5 billion is a minor increase, but for everybody else on planet Earth, that is a hell of a lot of money. Documents were actually reviewed by congressional investigators, and it seems to indicate that the scope and the cost overruns of this project were neither minor in nature nor in substance. You'll probably remember President Trump mentioning all of the upgrades that they were doing here, including the private elevators and the veranda, the parapet, and of course, all of the aforementioned gold and Carrara marble. But here is Jerome Powell's comment on this. He published early this morning. I tend to think that Jerome Powell is more than a little bit nervous about this because even if he is running the Fed, and that's technically not a federal agency, he is still subject to U.S. law as a private citizen. And when he goes in to testify before Congress, if he is under oath and he decides to lie during that testimony, he could very easily be prosecuted.
Good evening. On Friday, the Department of Justice served the Federal Reserve with grand jury subpoenas, threatening a criminal indictment related to my testimony before the Senate Banking Committee last June. That testimony concerned in part a multi-year project to renovate historic Federal Reserve office buildings. I have deep respect for the rule of law and for accountability in our democracy. No one, certainly not the chair of the Federal Reserve, is above the law. But this unprecedented action should be seen in the broader context of the administration's threats and ongoing pressure. This new threat is not about my testimony last June or about the renovation of the Federal Reserve buildings. It is not about Congress's oversight role.
I don't know about that, Jerome. Here's the thing. If you lied before Congress about the materially false representations you were making, in regards to the unnecessary renovations you were doing to a building that was already built, then that's a problem, and obviously you can be prosecuted for that. But if you also took advantage of the open checkbook you have from the people of the United States of America, that's also something that you should totally be held accountable for. You've also been shit. You've also been absolute shit when it comes to American monetary policy, and you have shown time and time again that your decision-making varies from administration to administration. The changes that were made under the Biden regime, under Jerome Powell, were obviously done to give a false sense of security to the left and to the access media, to make the Biden regime look better. And the decisions that he's made in the Trump administration, in my opinion, have been designed to ensure that we have not yet been as successful as we probably could have been.
The Fed, through testimony and other public disclosures, made every effort to keep Congress informed about the renovation project. Those are pretexts. The threat of criminal charges is a consequence of the Federal Reserve setting interest rates based on our best assessment of what will serve the public, rather than following the preferences of the president. This is about whether the Fed will be able to continue to set interest rates based on evidence and economic conditions, or whether instead monetary policy will be directed by political pressure or intimidation. I have served at the Federal Reserve under 4 administrations, Republicans and Democrats alike. In every case, I have carried out my duties without political fear or favor, focused solely on our mandate of price stability and maximum employment. Public service sometimes requires standing firm in the face of threats. I will continue to do the job the Senate confirmed me to do, with integrity and a commitment to serving the American people. Thank you.
He looks like a corpse as far as I'm concerned. He's also confused about the exact nature of our system here. This is a republic, not a democracy. Also, let me say thank you to Surtur, who says they had pro-Ayatollah signs taped to the side of it as well. Yep, I knew that they were pro-Iranian, like Iranian regime. Didn't know if it was specifically the Ayatollah, but that makes sense. Lee Walden says PDB reported from his sources there are up to 6,000 dead in Iran. I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. And Jim Kyle says, I would sincerely look into the cost of asbestos remediation because it's just another huge grift. Yes, it is extremely expensive to have asbestos removed from an existing building, which is the reason why Larry Silverstein had the World Trade Center 1 and 2 double indemnified with insurance, because he was supposed to take out all of that asbestos. And then, of course, the tremendous windfall from September 11th gave him a double payout. Hey, Would You Blow Me Too says, without taking out the Fed, nothing Trump has done means jack shit. It'll all come back within years. It's my opinion that the Fed is being taken out, but we are just biding our time until President Trump's chosen successor to Jerome Powell will be in there. And he will be leaving very shortly, within a matter of months. I believe it's like the first quarter of this year. So moving past that, it'd also help if we can bring Jerome Powell up on charges. Now, of course, this should not surprise you. Tom Tillis is very upset that the federal government is investigating Jerome Powell. He is claiming that if this continues to go forward, he will not bring confirmations to the committee. Well, guess what? He hasn't been bringing confirmations to the committee, as it were. So any threats from Tom Tillis ring hollow, and there's a lot that Tom Tillis could be doing to help out America and America first, but he's choosing not to. So I don't care what Tom Tillis says. Tom Tillis is a bloated bag of hot wind at this point, and anything that he has to say really means nothing to me. Congress is dead in my mind in terms of their ability to do work. I should be very specific about that. They are completely lacking, and they fail after every single time they are told to do something. Yeah, we've had a couple of things that got through, but the really important ones, like the U.S. attorneys in the states where we are trying to bring charges against these deep state hatchet men, they have not allowed these people to go forward. And it's because of that stupid blue slip rule, but we'll see where that ends up in the very near future. All right, now, we also need to give a big shout out to Judge Eileen Cannon and, of course, Captain America Jason Quinones, the U.S. attorney down in Florida, because the grand jury was impaneled starting today. This is the grand jury that is looking into Crossfire Hurricane, the raid on President Trump. This is the same grand jury which subpoenaed John Brennan. This is the same grand jury that John Brennan had his lawyer send a letter to the top district judge down in Florida and beg him to not have Judge Eileen Cannon take this case. Well, guess what? Judge Eileen Cannon is taking this case. This grand jury is being impaneled as we speak in her courtroom down in Florida. So this grand jury, as of today, impaneled in Fort Pierce, Florida, and I'm looking forward to seeing what types of charges they're going to come up with. Now, I think that Florida and Judge Eileen Cannon's courtroom is going to be the key to all of this. We can't get charges brought up in the Northeast because of that lack of U.S. attorneys. However, many of the people, well, let's say all of the people that we are trying to indict up in the Northeast could theoretically be indicted down here in Florida if this is a racketeering case. And then, of course, there is no statute of limitations. There is a lot going on. All of this stuff has been speculated by me in the past. Other people have suggested the same thing. We haven't heard anything from the administration on this, because why would they want to blow their load and just give everything away to the enemies? Of course, they don't. But the Fort Pierce grand jury is expected to investigate the almost decade-long conspiracy against President Trump and the alleged criminal acts started in 2015 and continued through Joe Biden's administration, continuing through President Trump's second administration as well. President Trump was spied upon. His family was spied upon. His private home was raided. They abused him with continued cases of lawfare in both civil and criminal courts. And of course, this is why everybody is so worried about political retribution right now. But this is not about retribution. This is about making the guilty pay for the crimes they committed against our chosen president, because they knew that President Trump was going to fundamentally change the game, not only in Washington, D.C., but around the country. And that is clearly happening right now before our eyes. And one of the final pieces that has to fall into place is that accountability. We've got to see these people brought to justice. We need to see charges brought against them. We need to see them indicted, and we need to see them hauled into a courtroom so that they can face a trial of their peers before a jury. So keep your eyes on Fort Pierce, Florida. Let me hit refresh on my screen here. And one thing that was interesting about the protests that we saw this weekend is that they didn't have the feeling of AstroTurf protests. There were people with all kinds of different signs. I didn't see signs that were being duplicated or signs that looked like they had been prepared in somebody's basement and then handed out to protesters that were showing up. Can't say the same about any of the other protests that we've seen against the administration for many, many years. Here we have an ad from Craigslist seeking paid protesters for downtown Boston. They apparently began a protest yesterday, and they're going to be carrying it through January 17th. If anybody here is in Massachusetts or living in the Boston area, I'd love to hear if this is actually happening. But right now, Mayor Brianna Wu is running for re-election, and of course, she is in the midst of being investigated by Housing and Urban Development. These protests are allegedly about fair housing. They're looking to pay people $150 a day. They are also giving people lunch, and they're also wanting people to be there for all 5 days. Now, you can see here we've got this Fair Housing Alliance sort of graphic here. Get paid daily using your voice and presence for action. And action is always a code for the communists. But the location, of course, was not announced. They wanted people to contact them directly. They wanted you to call them, give them a photo, give them your availability, and a brief note on why this resonates with you. And there you go. I'd wonder if this is going to be successful, but you guarantee this is the same type of stuff. We just don't always see these Craigslist ads going on. Here's another example of another protest, which was not AstroTurfed. This took place in the Pacific Palisades, and Spencer Pratt also announced that he was going to be running for mayor of Los Angeles. Now, all of these people, they had a couple of similar signs, but the vast majority of them had signs that seemed to be homemade, and they were not created by a single point of contact. IB Fish says, I've been using BC-powered aspirin for years for lower back pain, muscle soreness, or headache, almost instantaneous relief. You won't regret it. I rip open the package and pour it dry into my mouth. What is BC? Oh, powdered aspirin. Oh, I don't know if I could do that. I'd probably put it in water and then drink it down real quick. But either way, I'm my pain medication usage is pretty limited at this point. I'm usually taking like once early in the day, once midday, and then I have been forgetting to even take it at night. I'm still taking my stuff from Tamarack Garden, which you can also find in the description of this video, tamarackgarden.com. Use that code RP78. You guys will save $10 off an order of $50 or more. But here you can see there were a ton of people. Obviously, it's, we're years on from the fires that devastated all the people living in Pacific Palisades, and there's still no houses that have been built.
The Ian and Palisades fires destroyed about 16,000 homes and businesses, and 31 people lost their lives in those disasters. Today, to mark 1 year, ceremonies. Remember,
you got these crazies out there say her name, Renee Nicole Good, and they couldn't tell you a single person who died in the Pacific Palisades fire. They don't know a single name. All of those people's deaths were totally avoidable due to the poor fire management of Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom. And of course, don't forget, Karen Bass had that phone call where she was directly on tape saying that, something's going to happen. You'll understand. Just wait till I get back.
Conferences and protests. Desk manager Mark Liu.
Yes, sir, I'm aware. Yeah, because nobody's houses are being rebuilt.
At the desk with one of those protests happening in the Palisades right now. Mark, what's happening over there?
Yeah, so Amanda, this is a pretty big protest. It's taking place in the heart of Pacific Palisades. The participants here are demanding accountability from local and state leaders on the fire and fairness in the rebuilding process. Now, let me show you some video that was shot from SkyCal just about 30 minutes ago of this protest, I should say.
They let us burn. Now, that was the only sign that I saw that was duplicated in any regard. Spencer Pratt also gave a speech in front of a "They let us burn" sign. This is also reminiscent of what we saw Mel Gibson a couple months ago, maybe 6 months ago, did a speech in the Palisades. And it's also apparently Gavin Newsom has stepped up enforcement in the Palisades. So if you're a resident of the Palisades and you're trying to maybe go back and see about getting your house rebuilt, if they catch you there, they're going to come down really hard on you.
So the intersection of Antioch Street and North Swarthmore Avenue, it's the very heart of the commercial area of Pacific Palisades. There's probably about 1,000 people down there at a protest called the "They Let Us Burn" rally, which the organizers describe as a peaceful demonstration, calling for accountability and transparency.
Not a single person got into it with the cops. Nobody was throwing Molotov cocktails, nothing like that. This was a peaceful protest in its purest sense of the word. So I sincerely hope that the people of Palisades get what they deserve, which is their homes back. And here we are. President Trump told Karen Bass to rebuild the homes and do it quickly. And instead of doing that, she has continued to disobey. And the state of California wants to steal that land and put something else in its place. Of course, it'll probably be low-income housing. Who knows at this point? All right. Now, what was I saying about the Senate being totally useless? Well, over the weekend, they stuck a knife in the back of America First. They approved billions of dollars to be given to refugees, despite everything we've got going on with the Somali fraud in Minnesota, in Maine, in Ohio, in Washington. Name a state with a big Somali immigrant population, and you will find an epicenter of fraud. Now, Just the News had reported the appropriations bill for Labor and Health and Human Services contained $5.69 billion for refugee assistance services. Why? Why would you do that? We are actively in the process of getting rid of refugees, of getting rid of these people who are gaming the system and coming here so that they can get on freaking welfare. But the crazy part is that number, $5.69 billion, is 3 times higher than the funding levels before the Biden regime. Now, Senator Mike Lee and Rand Paul sounded the alarm and spoke out against this legislation. However, the Appropriations Committee passed the bill by a vote of 26-3, which included 14 Republicans voting with the Democrats. Now, Paul and Lee are not on the Appropriations Committee, so they could not vote, but they were able to get this through. And of course, that means if this bill is ultimately passed all the way through, then you're going to get a lot of money going to refugees. So the only GOPer to vote no for more refugee funding was Senator Bill Hagerty of Tennessee. Democrat Senators Chris Murphy of Connecticut and Chris Van Hollen of Maryland voted no as well, which is crazy. Wouldn't have seen that because they didn't think that there was enough money for the freeloading refugees. Now, Congress has less than a month to pass the remaining 9 appropriations bills that fund agencies in the fiscal year of 2026. This includes the one for Labor and Health and Human Services. I suppose Labor and Health and Human Services could simply refuse to pass that money on to the refugees, do everything they could to just hold on to it, and then at the end of the year, give it back to Congress. But, I feel like that's a bit of a pipe dream. We'll see what happens. I mean, I obviously, Lori Chavez-DeRimer at Labor, Secretary Kennedy at Health and Human Services, they both do have something to say about this. And just because the money is in the appropriations bill doesn't mean that it has to be spent. Now, Marco Rubio has also just announced the revocation of over 100,000 visas. That includes 8,000 student visas and over 2,500 specialized visas because they have committed criminal activity. Take a listen to Marco describing this decision to revoke all of these visas.
Our visa system, who you allow to visit your country, should reflect the national interest. We said that from the very beginning. It was one of the directives that we got from the president. It's one of the things he ran on. And so our visa process basically is, and there are some times we'll deny people visas because of activities they've undertaken overseas. Other times it's people that have visas but are in the United States doing things that run counter to our national interest. And the law gives us the right, and in fact, I would argue the obligation to remove people like that from our country. And we're going to continue to do it. I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, sometimes somebody comes in and says, oh, I want to come in as a student. They're here as a student, and then once they're here, they're involved in nefarious activity. We're going to remove them from the country. But maybe they're here as a researcher. Maybe they're here as, I don't want to say journalist because you guys will get upset, but it could be anything. These are visitors to the country. A visa is a visitor. It's not a right. By the way, we deny visas every day all over the world. People will go to an embassy, they'll sit for an interview, and the consular officer will deny them a visa because of something that came up in the record, because of something that came up in their interview, whatever it may be. So if you have the power to deny someone a visa before they get one, you most certainly have the power to revoke it once they get one and then do something they shouldn't be doing. So there's a variety of reasons why visas are denied, but all of them are because it implicates our national interest or national security in some way.
It is a privilege to visit the United States of America for whatever reason. And if the State Department wants to revoke your visa for any reason, then that's up to us. That is Marco Rubio and the Department of State. They can do it because that's within their purview. Now, I think that there are a lot that there is a lot that has to be done in regards to this, not simply visas being revoked, but denaturalization of people who have already become citizens of the United States of America. Now, we've also obviously been focusing very heavily recently on removing people who are not citizens, but have also been committing crimes. Whether or not they've been convicted, that doesn't matter. If you come to the United States of America for any reason, you commit a crime, you should get kicked right the hell out. Now, Tom Homan spoke over the weekend about the terrible circumstances that our agents find themselves in right now due to the normalization of violence and hatred being directed at ICE by the media, by the left. Let's take a listen.
They want to, they normalize. The media is normalizing interference with ICE. It is a crime to impede ICE officers. Bill Mnuchin just put out a list of 8.
Yeah, guys, literally every single audio clip that is posted to X, whoever it is that's uploading it, they control the audio. I can turn my volume all the way up, and I always do. In fact, with Tom Homan, I had to turn it down. So unfortunately, it takes way too much time for me to go through and manually adjust the volume every single time. So just turn it up on your end.
18 are the worst of the worst in Minneapolis. Many of them child sex crimes, child rape, child sodomy. These are the people we're looking for. For anybody to interfere in that is unconscionable. We need to enforce the law and arrest these bad guys. We've already arrested over 1,000 people in that state, and we're going to continue to do exactly what Congress has allowed us to do and what the law allows us to do.
Crime is one thing. Pedophiles, pederasts, child rapists, molesters, that is another thing entirely. I want every single one of these people to be removed, but I especially want them removed if it means they have already victimized a child, if they've raped a woman, if they've driven drunk and they've killed somebody, because all of these crimes were avoidable from the very start. So it is what it is, and these people need to get over it. Here's a prime example. This professor has finally been arrested by ICE. He was described as a criminal illegal alien sex offender. Now, his name is Sumit Gunasekara. He hails from Sri Lanka, and he was arrested on November 12th. According to ICE, Ontario police in Canada arrested him twice back in 1998 for making death threats and an invitation to sexual touching and sexual interference. He told police that the sexual offense charge involved a minor. So the Department of Homeland Security also notes that Gunasekara entered the U.S. in February of 98, left for Canada, and returned later that year on a student visa. It was only later they discovered, when he applied for a change of status with U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services in 2012, that he was already convicted of these heinous crimes up in Canada. Over the years, Gunasekara repeatedly attempted to manipulate our immigration system between applications, denials, and appeals, despite the convictions in Canada that made him ineligible for legal status in the United States of America. And hold on, I will need to exit this view. All right. Now, the courts here in the United States, in Las Vegas, convicted him of disorderly conduct after he was arrested for open and gross lewdness, probably exposing himself in public. And according to a press release from DHS, Gunasekaera's criminal history includes quite a few things. On August 28th of 1998, he was arrested by the Peel Regional Police in Brampton, Ohio, for uttering death threats. He was arrested again 3 days later for that invitation to sexual touching and sexual interference. He admitted to officers that his charge was related to a minor. On November 12th, 1998, a criminal court in Brampton, Ontario, convicted Gunasekaera for utter threat to cause death or bodily harm and sexual interference, and they sentenced him to 1 month of incarceration and 1 year of probation. Then on September 25th of 2003, the Metropolitan Police Department in Las Vegas arrested him for that open and gross lewdness. Then on January 16th of 2004, the Las Vegas Justice Court convicted him of disorderly conduct and sentenced him to fines. It's sickening that a sex offender was working as a professor on an American college campus. He was working at Ferris State University, which is in my home state of Michigan. And not only that, but he was given access to vulnerable students to potentially victimize them, just like he did many years before. That's from Tricia McLaughlin at DHS. Thanks to the brave ICE law enforcement officers, this sicko is behind bars and no longer able to prey on Americans. His days of exploiting the immigration system are over. Under President Trump and Secretary Noem, criminals are not welcome in the United States of America. Now, for their part, Ferris has now confirmed that Gunasekaera is no longer a professor at the institution. Professor Gunasekaera is no longer with Ferris State University. The university spokesperson said it would be inappropriate to discuss a personal issue. He's a pederast and he's being deported. I don't care what the personal issue is. You should be willing to talk about it so that we can get this all out into the open. Denise Ann says, I wish every single United States citizen would stop voting. Just stop. If nobody votes for them, they can't win. And if every single person refuses to vote, we win. Unfortunately, all it takes is one person to vote for them, which they would likely do. And then if they have one vote and still tens of millions of people don't vote, they would still win. So I think that it's going to take a far more work on the election system besides just that. All right, now we need to check in with the agent in Minneapolis who shot and killed Renee Nicole Good. Now, this woman you see on screen, her name is Dina Winter. She's a reporter for the Minnesota Star Tribune. She apparently assisted in doxing of this ICE agent, and after she was called out for it on X, she nuked her account and she went and ran and went into hiding. So the ICE agent who shot and killed far-left protester Renee Nicole Good in self-defense last week after she tried to mow him down is experiencing serious threats to his public safety, and he and his family are currently in hiding. A lot of that is due to the reporting of Dina Winter. The situation began when Dina Winter made sure that every leftist could see the full name of that ICE agent as she blasted it out to the world on X. We'll see if we can see that post right here. Where is it? Okay, so she tweeted out and she published his name, and then people gleefully responded about how they were now going to take direct action against that man. Now, here he is right here. Of course, he's got his face covered because he lived in the area. Here is her X account, which is now shut down because people were very, very upset with her. Now, his father has also spoken out about the situation, and I'm not going to go into too much detail, but he said she hit him. He also had an officer whose arm was in the car. He's not going to be charged with anything, the dad said. You would never find a kinder, nicer person. He's a committed conservative Christian. He's a tremendous father, tremendous husband. I couldn't be more proud of him. That is so awesome to know that the dad is keeping the sons back and making sure that somebody out there is saying good stuff about him. Now, in addition to that, Enterprising Patriots have put together a Give, Send, Go for the officer, and they had raised, as of earlier today, something like $375,000 $100,000. Let me see how high up it is now. Here we go. Okay. So, gosh, it's over $500,000 now. Now it's up to $511,169, and it's continuing to climb. It looks like every single hour people are donating, which is great because he and his family are going to need to move. They're not going to be able to stick around Minneapolis anymore, which is really too bad. Bill Ackman donated $10,000. He was the top donator. So, obviously, this is great to see people come together and to support this guy, because especially after he was doxxed by that reporter at the Minnesota Star Tribune, his life was in danger. His family's life was in danger. Of course, Renee Nicole Good's family is also looking to receive something like $1.5 million. It's probably actually a lot more than that now. I haven't gone on to see it, but let's go ahead and check in with it. Okay, it's still at $1.5 million. $1,503,327. 387. Okay, so it's actually gone down a little bit, which is interesting. A couple of people must have done chargebacks as a result of it. Yeah, I don't know if she can be arrested. I would imagine she could, because isn't there a law against doxing ICE agents and officers? But of course, she would just claim that she was doing something in the interest of news. It's a newsworthy story. All right, now. Tom Homan also appeared on Meet the Press over the weekend, and Renee Nicole Good came up in that conversation. The host of Meet the Press, Kristen Welker, attempted to twist the situation around and pin the blame on the ICE officer. Let's hear from Tom, though, because he's got a great retort.
I want to stay on this question, which is about the way in which the woman who was shot and killed is being labeled as a domestic terrorist. Just to be clear, is anyone who protests ICE a domestic terrorist in the eyes of the administration?
I can't say that. It's a case-by-case basis. But, if you look up the definition of terrorism, is there violence? Is there threat of violence based on an ideology that wants to change the way the government does what we do? Look up the definition of terrorism.
But was Secretary Noem correct to label her a domestic terrorist,
yes.
Mr. Homan?
Look, we don't know what I don't know what Secretary Noem knows and what I know. I can tell you is what they did is illegal. And if you look up this definition of terrorism, it certainly could fall within that definition. If you look at the definition of terrorism.
But you don't have evidence.
Pardon me?
You don't have evidence that she's a domestic terrorist.
I don't know what Secretary has that I don't. I'm not going to judge what the Secretary says, but if you look up the definition of terrorism, it certainly can fall within that. But I think we all got to agree there was no reason for this lady to do what she did. There's no reason to be there. If you want to protest, protest, but don't actively impede and interfere, and certainly don't drive a 4,000-pound vehicle toward an officer.
Yeah, do not drive an SUV at an officer with a smile on your face as you hit that gas pedal. Now, what's so funny to me is when it comes to the questions such as Kristen Welker was asking, but you don't have any proof she's a domestic terrorist. Well, just as Tom Homan was saying, if we look at the definition of terrorism, it is going to mention the use of violence or the threat of violence, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political goals. Now, based on everything we know about Renee Nicole Good, that is exactly what she did. So, yeah, I would say that a label of domestic terrorism is absolutely appropriate in that instance. What's funny is that the left ran to her aid immediately after the shooting and said, she's just a mom. She's just trying to get home. She's just trying to get away. She was afraid for her life. Of course she was afraid for her life. The ICE agent they were surrounding her vehicle. But as we saw from the video, as soon as that ICE agent released it to the press, she was smiling, she was laughing, and she hit that gas pedal just as she had been trained to do. Now, I'm sure you remember the Philly sheriff who said last week that you don't want this smoke in regards to ICE agents coming into Philadelphia. However, Sheriff Bilal appears to be fundamentally misinformed about what her powers are and what would actually happen if ICE were to come there. She said, you don't want this smoke because we will bring it to you. Well, The chief of police in Philadelphia put out his own statement. He said, over the past 24 hours, Philadelphia Police Department offices have been inundated with calls and emails from across the country and around the world, which makes it necessary to clear up some confusion about law enforcement authority in the city of Philadelphia. Let me be clear. The city of Philadelphia is policed by the Philadelphia Police Department, not by the Philadelphia Sheriff's Department. The Philadelphia Police Department is the city's primary law enforcement agency. Our primary officers are responsible for citywide patrol, criminal investigations, emergency response, and the enforcement of state and local laws. I serve as police commissioner by appointment of the mayor of Philadelphia and operate within the city's executive structure. The Philadelphia Sheriff's Office is a different entity, a separate entity, led by an elected official, currently Sheriff Rochelle Bilal, with a mission that includes court security, the service of legal process, prisoner transport, fugitive apprehension, and sheriff's sales. It does not police the city of Philadelphia, conduct criminal investigations, nor does it in any way direct municipal policing. The Philadelphia Police Department will continue to work professionally with all of our law enforcement partners, but clear lines of authority and accurate public representation of those roles are essential to maintaining public trust and effective public safety operations. So once again, a DEI hire has no idea what she's talking about. A DEI elected official has no idea what she's talking about. And she just got some of that smoke, if I'm not mistaken. All right. Now, we are going to take a look at what's been happening with some of these actions since the events of last week. Now, it would appear that ICE has lost a bit of their patience, which I am perfectly fine with. Here is a scene that we're going to check out where a leftist protester was running her mouth. This is in Minneapolis, and she essentially was ripped from the vehicle that she was driving as she was attempting to interfere with the actions of, I'm sorry, this is in Iowa. Well, maybe it's not in Iowa. Maybe the car is from Iowa. I don't know, but take a look. Imagine the leftist meltdown if ICE started getting hazard bonuses on their taxpayer dollars. That's from Jixerman. That would be hilarious.
Get the fuck out! Get the fuck out of here! We hate you! Fucking weed! Get the fuck out! Get the fuck out of here! Get the fuck out! Get the fuck out of here! Fucking weed! Get the fuck out of here! Get the fuck out of here! We hate you! We hate you! We hate you!
Oh, got her. She dropped her phone, too.
He just pepper sprayed me! He pepper sprayed my hair, but he pepper sprayed me and turned around.
Move! Keep moving!
Man, I really wish that they would have gotten out of the vehicle because her hitting those vehicles, that would count as reason enough to arrest her right there. Now, back in Minnesota, James Comer is commenting on Ilhan Omar and her relationship to the widespread fraud that's being identified in Minneapolis and around the state of Minnesota. Of course, as we reported last week, Ilhan Omar, her brother, their marriage records, and she and her husband's business records have all been subpoenaed by the House Oversight Committee, and Chairman James Comer suggested that Ilhan Omar sits at the top of the suspect list in their sprawling Minnesota fraud scandals with these taxpayer monies being given out through all of these various entitlement programs. Now, he had an exchange with a journalist by the name of Allison Steinberg, who raised serious questions about whether members of Congress themselves may have benefited from money funneled through political action committees tied to fraudulent daycares and healthcare schemes. Let's go ahead and take a listen to James Comer and this exchange with Allison.
Ms. Rarick, you spoke about the retaliation that many have experienced in light of trying to expose the fraud and the corruption happening in Minnesota. Can you speak more to that and what people are experiencing when they try to sound the alarm on what's happening?
Right. So that retaliation.
Now, hold on. This is from the 9th. I guess maybe they don't have video of this one. Okay. Well, I misunderstood that. I will just read through what he said. All right. So Allison says, there are reports that members of Congress are actually receiving daycare and healthcare clinic money funneled through various PACs. If this is true and widespread, how can the American people trust Congress to task and uncover the far-reaching tentacles of the fraud? It's an excellent question. James Comer said any member of Congress that's getting money unethically or illegally, there's an ethics committee and it's bipartisan. It's an equal number of Republicans and Democrats, and that's the committee that's supposed to investigate members of Congress. The ethics committee was created. We have in our rules that we're not supposed to investigate other members, but the ethics committee has a staff, and that is their sole purpose for existence in life. I think the House Ethics Committee traditionally has been a lot harder on unethical behavior than the Senate Ethics Committee. That's my opinion. But anybody that has any information on a member of Congress, bring that to the Ethics Committee and they'll investigate it. I don't care if they're a Republican or a Democrat. We need to hold them accountable. So this came as Comer and Steinberg were directly discussing Ilhan Omar, and he revealed that the number of complaints that are coming into the Ethics Committee filed against Ilhan Omar show that she definitely had a lot to do with what's been going on. Now, the funding that was tucked into that federal spending bill last week that Ilhan Omar tried to squirrel in, the $1 million that would have went to a fraudulent business, and then it was identified and Ilhan Omar got called out. Well, obviously, that appears to be a bit of a quid pro quo. Now, Senator Joni Ernst is the one who announced that. She said, what I uncovered the other day in one of our spending bills making its way through Congress was a $1 million earmark from Ilhan Omar. This earmark was supposedly going to a substance abuse clinic, which actually happened to be housed in a restaurant and run by 3 individuals who share the same residential address. So this is what we call what we saw with the fraud involving the daycare centers. Now we see other earmarks coming directly from members of Congress where it seems fraud is being perpetrated as well. Isn't that interesting? So Ilhan Omar is not the only one. She is just one of a number of them. I raised the issue. Unfortunately, the House now has stripped that earmark out of the spending bill. But again, this is how easy money has been flowing to bad actors in Minnesota. So James Comer also talked about Ilhan Omar's husband and how he may have financially benefited from lack of ethics and entities connected to these Minnesota fraud networks. Of course, you have the $30 million venture capital firm that is run by Tim Minette, the husband of Ilhan Omar. He has quietly removed names and bios from their top officers and advisors from their website, so people can't dig in if they haven't already gone to the website and archived it. And spoiler alert, people have, so you should be able to find that pretty easily. And according to a bombshell coming from the New York Post, Rose Lake Capital, also founded by Minette in 2022, did the exact same thing. They scrubbed the details of 9 key figures between September and October of 2025, even before this Minnesota fraud stuff really started breaking. And that list on that website had people that you've seen in the past, a former Obama ambassador, an ex-senator, and another Obama ambassador, the DNC finance chair, former DNC treasurer, and the CEO of Amalgamated Bank. All of these people high level in the Democrat Party. Steinberg asked, what about Ilhan Omar? And he said, she's at the top of the suspect list in that, so you'll see. But I can tell you, my members, there are going to be ethics complaints filed against Omar. She had an opportunity to come in here today. There have been countless reports that her husband has profited in some way, she in some way. I don't know if that's true or not, but she could have had an opportunity to come in here and defend herself. So hopefully you may all knock on her door and ask her some questions, and we'll see what she has to say. Of course, she's not going to come in unless she is subpoenaed to do so. So I don't know if she has denied the receipt of any subpoenas or if subpoenas have not yet gone out, but they need to do that, and they need to get her to put her hand on the holy book of her choice, because she needs to swear that she's telling the truth. All right, now getting a little bit more local with the leader of Minneapolis himself, Jacob Frey, and his wife. Jacob Frey and his wife both have some pretty deep ties to the Feeding Our Future fraud, which we have talked about in little bits from here and there, but we're going to talk about the detailed way in which they are both connected to this. So The Feeding Our Future fraud case, as you all know, $250 million in federal funds that were supposed to go to feed hungry children. Most of it went into the purchase of luxury cars, luxury homes, luxury handbags. It was sent overseas via wire. And as new information comes out, Mayor Jacob Fry, who has these personal and professional connections, is going to be questioned about this in the near future. Either he is complicit or he turned a blind eye and he allowed it to happen because he was getting political donations. This isn't just a story about stolen taxpayer money. It's also a story about this mayor whose wife worked for the very lobbying firm that shielded the Feeding Our Future fraudsters, whose campaign coffers swelled with donations from people indicted in the fraud, and whose appointees ended up in federal crosshairs. So this was, of course, founded by Amy Bach back in 2016. As I told you before, Amy Bach ended up suing the state of Minnesota because they refused to fund her. And it was during the pandemic that she ended up receiving many millions of dollars to pass out in the form of meals. Now, Amy Bach, even though she is already being convicted, she still denies that she was the one who was actually running the fraud, and it was all the Somalis that were working underneath her. But you probably remember she has a long-term Somali boyfriend who is also a felon. And, of course, she was the beginning of Feeding Our Future. So this spiraling investigation, which has now led to charges against 70 individuals and the indictment and conviction of nearly 60. This also includes Miss Bach. Now, the wife of Jacob Fry, Sarah Clark, also known as Sarah Stevens Fry. This is something that they do quite often. The wife will use her maiden name, and then she will use some additional disambiguation of her maiden name, perhaps with her married name. Her last name is not Stevens. Her last name apparently is Sarah Clark. Sarah Fry is her married name. I don't know where Stevens come from. That might be like her mother's maiden name, but they'll do this so that it becomes difficult to find them online. Now, a lot of people have been talking about Sarah Clark or Sarah Stevens Fry recently. This morning, CanCon and I were talking about it, and he said that he was having trouble finding evidence connecting her directly to Feeding Our Future. Well, we do have a couple of pieces of evidence that I brought for you today to show that Sarah Stevens Fry, a.k.a. Sarah Clark, is directly connected to Feeding Our Future outside of Jacob Fry, his administration, all of the donations going into his campaign coffers. And it's through a former employee of hers. She was a lobbyist and government liaison at the Hilden Advocacy and Law Firm. Now, that firm is owned by a woman named Nancy Hilden. They provided legal representation and lobbying services to Feeding Our Future. And also, Nancy Hilden, appeared in court alongside Amy Bach, the one who created Feeding Our Future, and she helped them make their way through all of the necessary regulatory hurdles that one with a 501c3 would find themselves in. Now, Nancy Hilden's personal tagline or her personal catchphrase is that she is your friend at the Capitol. And the firm was specifically listed as the mailing address for Feeding Our Future in the annual reports that they turned into the Minnesota Attorney General's office. And let me show you that right here. Oh, shucks. Where'd it go? I had it pulled up earlier and I gave it to CanCon. Hold on just a second. I will pull it up so that I can show it to you because it is important. Here it is. Okay. So here is Nancy Hilden. This is her with Governor Tim Walz. She posted this picture back in August of she and Tim together. Here she is with Attorney General Keith Ellison. This is posted back in October of 21. Here is that annual report that a 501c3 in Minnesota would send to the state of Minnesota. You can see the physical address for Feeding Our Future, owned by Amy Bach. Here is her previous home address, and here is the mailing address which is listed at the Hilden law firm, care of Nancy Hilden. Again, Jacob Fry's wife worked for Nancy Hilden. So they were both directly connected to Feeding Our Future from a number of different angles. Now, the Hilden law firm and lobbying group also lobbied for the Somalia Museum of Minnesota. This was founded by Osman Ali in 2011. Ali also pled guilty to fraud in a different case. The museum still received $4.5 million in state funding months after he pled guilty in that case. This is not something that is unusual. Many of these Somali community leaders and company owners are engaged in some type of fraudulent activity, get in trouble legally, still end up getting a ton of money out of the state. Nobody seems to ever say boo about it. Jacob Fry's mayoral campaign, his reelection in 2021, received a ton of money from Somalis who were engaged in fraudulent activity. There was at least 8 individuals in the Feeding Our Future indictments who donated the maximum allowable amount to Jacob Fry's reelection campaign. These also included people who owned the Safari restaurant. That was a South Minneapolis spot which was accused of being a conduit for fraud. Some of these fraudulent meals were allegedly served through this restaurant. Of course, none of them were actually served. And because of all of these people, which you can see here having donated to Jacob Fry, you can look directly to see exactly who they are and what they've done, what they have, what crimes they have committed. And then, of course, there is all of the people that Jacob Fry has appointed within his administration, which is going to be a whole bunch of Somalis who are also involved in fraudulent activity. The list goes on, and it is safe to say that all of these people are choosing to cover up these crimes because they know that when the truth is fully examined, people are going to find themselves indicted. This is a picture of Sarah Clark, a.k.a. Sarah Stevens Fry. This was her picture on the Hilden Advocacy and Law Group's webpage. Of course, it's not there anymore. But she is a white woman. She's a liberal white woman. Again, one of the most dangerous people in America that you can find. This is also her LinkedIn account. This is her LinkedIn account. She was the Director of Government Affairs at the Hilden Advocacy and Law. Now, on her LinkedIn account, it said that she was there from 2016 to 2022, but I found information to suggest she was actually working there up until the beginning portion of 2025, like January 2025, and then she left, and I don't know what she's doing now. But Jacob Fry and his wife Sarah are not the only ones who should be nervous about what's happening in Minnesota. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is also suggesting that Tim Walz ought to be very, very nervous. He, of course, has seen Nick Shirley's expose, and he was scheduled to go to Minnesota and the State House over the weekend, and apparently Tim Walz canceled his security detail, and Scott Bessent was livid.
But one curious detail, this interview was originally scheduled for the Minnesota State Capitol. Can you explain why that didn't come to pass and why we're here?
For one reason, Chris, Tim Walz is a coward. He is a coward. He would not guarantee that the Treasury Secretary of the United States of America would have police protection in the Minnesota State Capitol. He is afraid of what is coming. And he's not going to be able to hide behind this curtain because we will get there. And I don't have to go in the Capitol building to investigate him. I would love for him to come to Treasury and answer some questions. I can guarantee you that he will be safe and sound then, depending on what we discover. I don't know about his future. And as I said earlier, that will be the only view of the Oval Office he ever gets. Because let's just think about the long arc of history. The suppression of this story is this guy got to within could have been one heartbeat away from being president of the United States. And when we don't have a functioning mainstream media and great independent journalists like you, citizen journalists who go out and do the investigative work, because the people who are supposed to be doing it don't do it anymore.
That's right. It's down to citizen journalists to get to the bottom of the type of fraud that we see in Minnesota. Now, as you are also probably aware, reported last week, Anna Paulina Luna put forth both Attorney General Keith Ellison and Tim Walz for criminal referrals to the Department of Justice. Those criminal referrals have been acknowledged by Attorney General Pam Bondi. The investigation is ongoing. Now, do you remember this individual we talked about last week? It was a violent Portland-based trans Tifa activist known as Comrade Freya. Didn't take long for Comrade Freya to be identified. Comrade Freya also goes by Jennifer Michelle Bitgood. He's a 43-year-old man who identifies as a female, and he has just been arrested. He is the one who said that trans Tifa activists were going to get street justice on the ICE agent who was responsible for the shooting of Renee Good. Portland police have confirmed that this man, Sean Michael Bitgood, has been arrested. We don't know whether or not it's in relation to the threat made on video. Could have been something else. I mean, this guy has been arrested before. He used to be a healthcare worker. Now I think he's just a professional trans Tifa activist. But it would not surprise me if the arrests were related to this video that we saw. Now, you can see here, this is the booking information, booked on January 10th. You've got a charge of coercion, which is a Class C felony, and then the unlawful use of a weapon, which is also a Class C felony. So we'll see where that one goes as well. Now, also being revealed is a Revolutionary Communists of America training packet teaching their members through pamphlets on how to organize a quote-unquote class struggle resistance against the capitalist ICE officers. And in this pamphlet, they describe recruiting union members so that they can organize a militant defense. They want to drive ICE out of the cities. They also talk about delivering justice for Renee Nicole Good. They criticize both Waltz and Fry for not coming down hard enough against ICE. There's also some other stuff in here about teaching people how to get away from ICE, how to block them. And they complain about President Trump using Somalians and immigrants as an excuse so that they can pit the working class against each other. Those commies got to stick together. At least that's what they want to tell each other. An injury to one is an injury to all. Organized labor must step up the fight. Worker self-defense committees in every workplace and neighborhood targeted by ICE. No faith in the Democrats. Down with both parties of the ruling class. Need to adjust my seat. Oh, that's not it. There we go. Okay. Oh, my goodness. These people are insufferable. They are so annoying, but we are still fighting against them. Got to get rid of them. All right. Now, last night in Minneapolis, ICE agents and federal officers deployed flashbangs, pepper balls, tear gas against the protesters, which were outside of the federal ICE detention center. Let's take a look.
All necessary and reasonable force to include the deployment of crowd control chemical munitions.
Are you okay?
More smoke.
We got medics.
More smoke. Obviously, they must have some vehicles that need to come through. it doesn't really do anything. They don't disperse. They just run back, and then they run forward again. They kick the tear gas out of the way. Now, Kristi Noem also appeared with Maria Bartiromo this weekend talking about the surge in ICE officers. They are now up to 3,000 agents in the city of Minneapolis.
And Governor Walz's corruption has been exposed. It's been exposed for years. He's being held accountable to it, so he's trying to divert the attention away from him and his failed leadership. We're going to continue to do our work and specifically focus in Minnesota. And Maria, we've surged HSI officers there specific to focus on sex trafficking and child trafficking. It's so prevalent in Minnesota. It's horrific. And we brought dozens and dozens of those individuals to justice already. We're going to keep hundreds of HSI officers there to continue to protect those children. Every day we get another individual that was sexual assault against a child, sodomy against a child. I can't believe that the mayor and the governor can defend allowing those people to go out there and victimize more of our children and grandchildren.
Well, unfortunately, I can believe it. Yes, it's true. The governor of Minnesota has had credible accusations for the molestation of children prior to this. I don't know about Jacob Frey, but Jacob Frey obviously loves the Somali community, and there appears to be a large number in the Somali community who have absolutely no problem victimizing children in exactly this same way. So it's not surprising to me. And this is also something that is common happenstance all around the country anytime you get groups of these people together. Now, take a look at this. I told you about this gentleman last week, Ibrahim Diop. He was the finance boss at Minneapolis Public Schools. He went to go work at another public school system in another state. He's currently on leave, administrative leave, because he misappropriated tens of millions of dollars. But it also would appear that he is connected to the Quality Leering Center. There was a group bus transportation company called Mesa Transportation Services. They were recorded parked outside of the daycare center, and an article from transportation consultant Rob Carpenter first raised some questions about Mesa, and he noted that there were some connections to Abdelham Lawabani and Nohad Lawabna. In 2020, two individuals with those names were both charged in Arizona with submitting $2.75 million in fake medical trip invoices through A&N Services. Prosecutors allege that more than 9,000 non-emergency medical transportation rides never occurred. Court records show the case was dismissed without prejudice in September of 2020 at the request of prosecutors. And the indictment in that case says that those two are brothers. They reside in Fountain Hills, Arizona. Both are listed as managers with a business address showing 8441 Wayzata Boulevard, Suite 125, Golden Valley, Minnesota, for a business in Arizona. That address is also linked to Mesa Transportation Services on government records. A Secretary of State filing from the company's 2009 incorporation lists a Nohad Lawabna as an organizer, and additionally, a Nohab Lawabna is listed as the manager of a separate entity known as Mesa Transportation Integrated Services. That also lists a Fountain Hills address as its mailing address. Helson Karugaki is listed as the manager on Secretary of State records for Mesa Transportation. Furthermore, records from an Arizona civil case state that brothers Abed and Nohad have operated several businesses in Minnesota and Arizona over the past 30 years, and that Mesa Transportation is another non-emergency medical transport business owned and operated by these two men. That case involved a dispute between a subcontractor and A&N Services operated by Lawabna and Lawabni. In 2020, the Arizona Court of Appeals upheld a lower court's decision against A&N Services, finding clear and convincing evidence of bad faith and fraud. The manner in which A&N kept their books was misleading and purposefully opaque. Subcontractors were not always paid for their rides and did not have a method of knowing, at least before 2015 or 2016, which rides had been approved and paid. Subcontractors had to rely on A&N's accounting regarding both earnings and deductions. This was later determined to be false. To further complicate matters, A&N's data appeared after each billing protocol period. Alpha News has attempted to contact Mesa Transportation. An email to the company bounced back because the address didn't exist. They also called the company's listed number, but the phone line rang repeatedly and never went to voicemail, and then it just disconnected. However, Mesa Transportation Services has continued to hold a lucrative contract with Minnesota Public Schools for many years, transporting HHM students in passenger vans to and from school. And according to records, the Diop, the man who left the Minnesota Public Schools and went to another state, signed off on Mesa as a contract and increased it by $1 million, $1.5 million, and another $500,000 in recent years. These contract agreements also required school board approval. When Alpha News asked the district to confirm Diop's status and whether his leave relates in any way to transportation vendors or contracting decisions, the Minnesota Public Schools said due to data privacy laws, Minnesota Public Schools cannot comment at this time. Of course, Diop is not commenting either. But once again, another Minnesota high-ranking official has ownership in a van company that dropped off kids at a fraudulent daycare center, the Quality Leering Center. He holds a multi-million-dollar contract with Minnesota Public Schools, and it was signed by this man right here that was on leave for committing some type of fraud, misappropriating funds, and likely if he's allowed to continue working in, I believe it was Wisconsin, then they're probably going to lose a lot of money as well. Enoch, good to see you, buddy. Just want to say, keep up the hard work. I appreciate you, brother. If you guys did not subscribe to Enoch last week, or you don't already follow Enoch on X or on Truth Social or any of the other platforms, I encourage you all to do that. Enoch has been a friend of mine for many, many years, virtually since the beginning of this movement. We were in Washington, D.C. together on January 6th. That was the first time that we met in person. That was super cool to be able to hang out that day. But definitely follow him and check out the project that he is working on. He's creating an entire album of songs about the history of America, and the one that we watched last week was totally awesome. Sean Joe says, Zach, there is a great vid of a patriot punching one bunch of Dems at a Minnesota ICE facility today. You know what? I saw that earlier and I bookmarked it, and I had too many tabs open, so I couldn't pull it up at the time. My plan was to find it, and if somebody would be so kind as to send it to me, because I think that my bookmark did not take. No, I found it. We'll watch that. We'll watch that right now. Actually, we will watch it before we go into the next story about the Tren de Aragua prostitute and her boyfriend who committed the ICE ramming and shooting in Portland last week. Dang it. Oh, cold cocked. And then he fights off a whole group of them. Oh, man. Dropped him. Watch the kid in the red jacket. Go to sleep.
Hey, guys.
He put them all down. Every single one of them. I absolutely love it. Thank you to Filter Dog, who says, I have a theory that the jab has affected the brains of libs. I don't even think that's theory, bro. I feel like that's just fact. Sean Joe, thank you for the cookie and the can. Filter Dog says PDB says around 4,000 dead in Iran. Sean Joe says group who did it is called Mech Iranian Commies. Okay. Sean Joe, thank you for 2 cookies. Who cares? Says, oh, yeah, I read that one already. Oh, my gosh. Yes, finish him. That's exactly what that was. That was great. Oh, my gosh. All right. That's worth a follow. Okay. Next, real quick, before we continue, I've got one more message from Rumble. And once again, our friends over here at Rumble Wallet. You guys, they can cancel your accounts. They can freeze your cards. They can decide what you're allowed to buy, what you're allowed to say, what you're allowed to support. Big banks and financial institutions have total control, and they use it. And that's why financial independence matters now more than ever. So introducing Rumble Wallet. It's a non-custodial wallet built for real freedom. With Rumble Wallet, you control your money, not a bank, not a government, not a tech company. You can buy digital assets like Tether, Tether Gold, and Bitcoin all in one place. No permission, no middleman, no cancel button. And when you want to support the creators you actually believe in, you can use the Rumble Wallet app to directly tip those creators fast and without interference. This isn't a credit line that they can shut off. It's your wallet. It's permanent. It's yours to protect your future, yours to protect your family. Because when the system falls, when institutions turn on their own people, financial sovereignty is the difference between security and vulnerability. Rumble Wallet isn't about politics. It's about freedom, ownership, and protecting what's yours. So take control today. Download the Rumble Wallet now and step away from big banks for good, true ownership, true protection, and true financial freedom. You can use wallet.rumble.com, the QR code, or go to the App Store for the phone that you have in your pocket. Thank you very much to Rumble Wallet. All right, let's talk about the Tren de Aragua pimp and hoe. So these you know what? And actually, let me actually show you the Portland police chief. Crying because he has to admit that the Tren de Aragua pimp and hoe were actually Tren de Aragua. Dude literally starts crying because he hates that he has to tell people this.
Confirm, first and foremost, that these two individuals are in stable condition. They are still hospitalized. They are in custody of the federal law enforcement, but grateful that they are appear to be on the road to recovery, and I'm grateful for that. They do have some nexus to involvement with TDA. We can confirm that, and what I can say is there is an association with the two folks yesterday and TDA. I hesitated to even share this information initially because I'm very aware of the historic injustice of victim blaming oftentimes portrayed by law enforcement, including this very agency that I've represented so proudly for so many years. And historically, we have not been quick to disclose the potential criminal history of others. I want to speak for just a moment specifically to my Latino community.
Here he goes.
It saddens me that we even have to qualify these remarks, because I understand, or at least have attempted to understand through your voices, your concern, your fear, your anger. This information in no way is meant to disparage or to condone or support or agree with any of the actions that occurred yesterday.
Oh, hold on.
We bring in the studio this morning one of the gay rights activists, Mr. Should I call you Mr? Sure. Pepe Julian Onzima. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for
Good morning.
Morning to you.
Why are you gay?
Who says I'm gay?
You are gay. You are a transgender.
What shows that?
You are gay. Mr. Day, Chief Day, you are gay. Okay. So anyways, federal prosecutors have now officially charged the driver for ramming into the ICE vehicle. Now, the hoe was, hold on just a second. Let me make sure I'm getting this right. So, yes, yeah. Luis David Nico Moncada. He was the driver. That was the pimp. The hoe was the one that they were initially trying to arrest. She was in the passenger seat. I don't know if she was ducking down or if she was sitting up straight. But they have both been charged in the ramming attack on immigration officials in Portland. This was a non-fatal shooting because ICE fired into the vehicle. They were able to get away. And the liberal media coverage and the conversation by the Democrats has 100% been to condemn ICE. How dare you? How dare you try to shoot these innocent people in their cars? Local and state officials, every single Democrat that's commented on this cried just like Chief Day did there. On the 10th, Luis Moncada, and he's also known as Luis Nino Moncada. He's a Venezuelan national. He's here illegally. He was federally charged with felony aggravated assault on a federal officer and damaging government property in excess of $1,000. Criminal complaint details that Border Patrol agents were attempting to detain the Venezuelan woman, the red-haired hoe, on January 8th. She is part of a Tren de Aragua sex ring. She is not like a victim. She is like one of the leaders, the women in charge here. Her name was Yorlenis Betsabeth Zambrano Contreras. She's been charged out of the Western District of Texas for improper entry by an alien. I don't know why they haven't charged her with human trafficking, but she came into the United States illegally in September of 2023. She got a notice to appear, and she didn't show up. Big surprise. Now, Nino Moncada, he came in illegally in 2022. He got a final order of removal from a judge in Denver in 2024. Border Patrol agents located the woman's red Toyota truck in a parking lot at Adventist Health Primary Care. She was getting her uterus scraped, maybe. The FBI investigator who wrote the complaint says Nino Moncada, the male suspect and driver, placed the truck in reverse and crashed into an unoccupied Border Patrol vehicle with enough force to cause significant damage. It alleges he repeatedly shifted between drive and reverse. He struck the vehicle multiple times. This is what she looks like. There's her truck. Undoubtedly bought with the money she got selling her ass to people in America. She's a scary looking broad. I'm just going to say it. Agents reported fearing that Moncada would strike them with the truck following the attack. One Border Patrol agent fired at the truck. Nino Moncada fled in the vehicle to an apartment building in East Portland. He called 911. He requested medical assistance for gunshot wounds to himself and the female. Portland police medical personnel responded. The officers applied a tourniquet to Nino Moncada before both individuals were transported to area hospitals. He allegedly repeatedly stated F ICE while receiving treatment. Here is the ICE vehicle that was struck. You can see he did quite a bit of damage. Whole front end is messed up. Does she have an OnlyFans? I don't know if she has an OnlyFans, but I know that she has a an ad to purchase her online. If you want to check that ad out, all I'm saying is you just search her phone number, 252-226-8791. Got to look in Google, but then you'll get an eyeful, and you'll see how little she was paying for, or how little she was charging for people to defile her. Oh, God, that was it right there. How about a warning, Andy? Oh, good God. Sorry, people. At least it was blocked out. Oh, my gosh. Anyways, the governor of Oregon, Miss Kotek, Tina Kotek, is also shaken and enraged, exactly like the police chief was upset when he spoke out about this. Let's hear from Tina.
We are standing here today, united as a state, wanting peace and safety in our communities. We are all shaken and outraged by another terrible, unnecessary.
You guys ever seen, what's that movie, Original Gangsters? Is that the guy from Original Gangsters? Hold on. I don't think so. I feel like he's no longer alive. Let me go to IMDb. No. I'm thinking of Fred Williamson. Fred Williamson's passed away, definitely. No, wait. No, he kind of looks like Jim Brown, but I know Jim Brown has passed away as well. The guy in the back is Kotex. No, sorry, the guy in the front is Kotex, I meant to say.
Violent event instigated by the reckless agenda of the Trump administration. This time in our own state, in our largest city, coming just one day after the tragedy in Minnesota.
All right. Yeah. Well, you know, it could have been avoided entirely if two Venezuelan illegals that were both wanted for jumping their immigration hearings and not leaving the country, and then, you know, for being involved in human trafficking. If that hadn't happened, then yes, it totally would have been avoidable. Obviously, Tina. Jeez, oh, Pete. All right. Now, the director of ICE had some choice words for the chief of police there in Portland because he was like, are you kidding me? You're crying about these people?
In Portland, where the police chief was crying while admitting that 2 illegal immigrants who were shot by ICE this week have ties to Tren de Aragua, TDA.
It saddens me that we even have to qualify these remarks, because I understand, or at least have attempted to understand through your voices, your concern, your fear, your anger.
Director Lyons, what's he crying about?
You know, Peter, I have no idea what he's crying about. You know, Border Patrol agents were conducting a targeted enforcement operation on suspected TDA gang members in a human trafficking prostitute and staying in his city. So I would think he would be happy that we take these criminal elements out of his neighborhoods, but I'm not sure what he's crying about. He went on to say that he didn't want to victim blame. There were criminals in this situation, not victims. And if you use
the victims were the women being brought into human trafficking, Chief.
3,000 to 4,000 pound vehicle to attempt to ram a law enforcement officer, whether it's one of his officers, state police, or a Border Patrol agent, there's going to be consequences. And we're happy that we're taking 2 TDA gang members, which TDA is a known suspected terrorist organization now, out of the community.
Yeah, that's the only thing that matters. I could not believe that guy was crying about that. All right, you guys, we're going to call it there. I need to do some prep for my show tonight at 10:30. We are going to be talking about the final series in regards to the Philadelphia experiment. We're going to be talking about Duncan Cameron, a.k.a. Al Bielek. So join me tonight on Badlands Media, or don't, and just be back here tomorrow at 5 p.m. for another episode of Red Pill News Live. Lee Walden, final thank yous, says, give the good guys a water cannon and battery cables. Well, I mean, as it disperses, wouldn't they want something a little stronger? Maybe like a Tesla Powerwall. Freya and the boys, you know what, Freya, I'm sorry. I can neither confirm nor deny, but he says, Zach, you have to tell your listeners that it's not anything to do with me. I don't know. I don't know, Freya. Is Freya the trans Tifa watching the show? No, I'm just kidding. That's actually just Freya and boys, good friend of the channel. Thank you to Sean Joe. Again, no thanks, Joe says, thanks, Lisa and Zach. I hope you guys had a great weekend. I'm looking forward to this week's reporting on new, old, and future revelations that will be released and revealed by you this upcoming week. God bless. Stay safe. Thank you, my friend. You do the same. Sean Joe, thank you for the can and the cookie. And I would like to just remind you all about my friends over at All Good. My good friend Jessica over here at All Good. Jessica and All Good are creators of specialized, natural, clean skincare using purposeful premium ingredients, stuff like 100% grass-fed and finished beef tallow and organic essential oils. Emphasizing ingredients with a purpose. These are going to be hypoallergenic, nutrient-rich formulas free from toxins. They are designed to nourish, hydrate, and strengthen your skin barrier with vitamins A, D, E, and K. And each product also has a what and why explanation for every single ingredient, so you're not going to find any mysteries in here. These products are going to mimic your skin's natural lipids for deep moisture. It's suitable for sensitive skin of all kinds. It promotes a healthy, youthful glow without giving you harmful chemicals. Every single product is clean, natural, supporting your overall wellness, and it's aligned with healthier, toxin-free living so you can make America and your body healthy again. You can get pure tallow moisturizers, tallow face balm, tallow sunscreen, non-toxic smoothing serums, hair care products, and they also have bundles. You just have to remember to head on over to goallgood.com and use the code RP78. And one final thing, don't forget about my friends over at tamaracgarden.com. Absolutely love the stuff that they sent me. Lisa is a huge fan of it as well. Also, completely natural products, except they are sourcing and producing everything themselves. I know Jessica produces her products herself as well, but they've got herbs and plants and a whole bunch of stuff that they are harvesting from the mountain on which they live. And everybody who uses these products at Tamarack Garden seem to have a wonderful experience as well. Handcrafted herbal remedies, dermatologist-recommended skincare, and teas locally harvested in the Pacific Northwest, and ingredients that you're going to feel good about putting on your body. Again, also make yourself and America healthy again. All right, you guys, good luck. God bless. I'm going to pass out these gold pills, and we're going to get going. And I hope to see you either tonight or tomorrow on another episode of Red Pill News Live. Until that time, peace.